Tonight on 2020.
It's not a good idea to get out of control in the air.
You're telling us, crazy captains, paranoid passengers,
please help me, why? It's nothing wrong.
And flight attendant freakouts.
So why all of a sudden are we seeing so many people just break?
It's not fly the friendly skies, it's fly the crazy skies.
You're stuck 6 hours in a flying tube at 35,000 feet.
For God's sake, somebody help me!
And it can start with those touchy-feely TSA agents.
This woman, she touched my vagina 4 times.
Tonight, the inside story with viral video and confessions from a flight attendant.
You spot the crazy ones as soon as they walk in.
It's not hard to spot them.
The celebrities acting out, the wet t-shirt contests, and all that red-hot action.
I just joined the Mile High Club.
In air and on land, we're gonna blow you away with a whole lot of crazy. Just plain crazy. Here now, Elizabeth Vargas.
Good evening. It's Friday the 13th, a day a lot of people consider unlucky, perhaps even to travel by air. But the same thing could be said for the last 2 weeks. Sometimes it's been an act of nature, like a United flight being struck by lightning just last night. But more often, it's been mankind doing the striking. On-air meltdowns at 35,000 feet. All too real, and it feels all too often on some flights it might be the crew you have to worry about.
Come fly with me, let's fly away.
When Frank Sinatra sang Come Fly With Me, it captured a world of glamorous travel and sky-high romance, a time when becoming a stewardess was many a young girl's dream. But that's all changed. They're called flight attendants now, and lots of them, women and men, feel like something else.
I'm the punching bag.
We've had it. The flight attendants have had it.
You're stuck 6 hours in a flying tube at 35,000 feet.
And those hours are now often spent trapped with angry passengers packed in as tight as a tin of sardines.
Now it's like everyone against everyone.
There are no more seats.
They're mad at the financially strapped airlines that eliminated the creature comforts, cut the number of flights, and slashed the number of flight attendants.
Trust me, if the airlines could figure out a way to get rid of us, I'm sure they would. Blankets, pillows, flight attendants.
As we leave the gate, make sure your seatbelt is fastened.
The responsibility for our safety in the air may seem like an important job to us flyers, but the wages are bottom of the barrel. It's become a dead-end job.
Someone like myself made $9,700 in their last year of flying.
$9,700?
In my 20th year as a flight attendant.
Everybody's always surprised to learn that we're only paid when the door is shut. So for flying hours only. If there's a delay or mechanical, we're not getting paid.
So basically what we've got are underpaid, overworked, highly stressed employees.
There's this pressure cooker of chaos that goes up there. There's all kinds of personalities.
Stop it!
That chaos and stress was captured humorously in this Nicoderm commercial.
Only 2 carry-on items!
And the tensions were captured for real just weeks ago as these images swept the internet. An American Airlines flight attendant in a crazy rant just minutes before takeoff. But the still reigning king of flight attendant meltdowns is Steven Slater. He was huge news when I first spoke to him last year on Good Morning America.
I just kind of went with it.
The amazing story began when the JetBlue flight he was on from Pittsburgh landed at Kennedy Airport. Slater, a flight attendant for some 20 years, says he couldn't take it anymore.
You were being verbally abused by the passengers you were trying to serve.
Right.
He snapped, dropped the F-bomb over the intercom, grabbed a couple beers, popped the plane's emergency chute, slid down and headed for his car and drove home.
Did you know at that point that you were ending your career as a flight attendant?
Oh, yes.
This was a dramatic exit.
It was a dramatic exit.
The anger and frustration now common among many flight attendants is shared by some pilots. In their glory days, as captured in the movie Catch Me If You Can, pilots were like high-altitude rock stars.
Are you a real-life pilot?
I sure am, little lady.
Their once glamorous jobs have been shockingly devalued. Last summer, pilots protested that their pay had been slashed to half of what they were making 10 years ago. An ABC News report recently captured pilots sleeping in airport lounges rather than spending some of their earnings on hotels. But the new standard for scary pilot stories happened just weeks ago, when Captain Clayton Osborne simply and inexplicably went crazy. It was a breakdown seen across the nation when this video was posted on the internet. When Captain Osborne started ranting in the aisle, the co-pilot managed to get an off-duty pilot into the cockpit. They locked the captain out. On board that New York to Las Vegas flight was former corrections officer David Gonzalez. What happened when the pilot tried to get back into the cockpit?
He kicked the door. He kicked the door. It almost buckled. He says, "It's me, let me in. This is where we take the plane down."
This is where we take the plane down?
Yes.
At that point, what did you do?
Well, 2 flight attendants that are there are trying to get him away from the cockpit door, and he just tossed one flight attendant, and we made eye contact. She kind of whispered to me, "Help me," and that's all I needed.
Gonzalez says they fought for 5 minutes before he got the pilot into a chokehold and felt him pass out. Only then, he says, did other passengers begin to help.
I saw a lot of fear.
In the fellow passengers?
Yeah, those people were afraid.
Just remain seated again. We apologize.
Passengers calmed as word spread that the errant pilot had been bound and subdued. The plane made an emergency landing in Amarillo, Texas.
JetBlue 191 emergency, and we're going to need authorities and medical to meet us at the airplane.
Once on the ground, marshals took the unconscious pilot into custody, while David Gonzalez was rushed by grateful fellow passengers.
One guy came up to me and said, "I had a flash of my daughter. I thought I wasn't going to see her again. I have 5 kids. So I didn't have a chance to even think of my own."
David's wife told me he is having nightmares about the incident almost every night. As for the troubled Captain Clayton Osborne, he was sent for psychiatric evaluation at a medical facility for federal prisoners. And just yesterday, he was indicted on 1 count of interfering with a flight crew, a crime that can carry a 20-year jail sentence. Was it surprising to see a pilot have a meltdown like this?
We're all people. We're subject to stresses, to pain, to hurt. Ultimately, what we need to remember is that we're all people first. Our profession and our job comes second.
Steven Slater's attitude,
"Take this job and shove it,"
right out of Johnny Paycheck's Take This Job and Shove It, still lives in airline lore. All harried flight crews remembering how he swore at passengers and exited on the emergency chute. Do you regret what you did?
Not in the least, not in the least. I say that day to me was sort of taking the reins back on my life.
Excuse us, please.
Turns out legal proceedings against him resulted in 1 year of probation for attempted criminal mischief and a $10,000 fine. So, still worth it?
I believe so. You can only push people so far. You know, who hasn't been overworked and underpaid? Who isn't stressed? It was very resonant of where we are as a culture and a country in that moment, and still are.
Are you insane?
When we come back, fasten your seatbelts for frequent flyer freakouts.
Don't tell them!
I couldn't believe it.
Some jaw-dropping antics from the passenger side.
I just joined the Mile High Club in the bathroom.
See what's next.
2020 continues with Passengers Gone Wild.
Flying can be downright miserable, but it's often your fellow passengers that'll make it a special hell. From screaming kids to drunken diatribes.
I'm bleeding. Why am I all like this?
As veteran flight attendant Heather Poole writes in her book Cruising Attitude, the best anti-tantrum tactic is to get rid of troublemakers even before takeoff.
You spot the crazy ones as soon as they walk in? When you're saying good morning, good morning?
It's not hard to spot them. On my last flight, a guy walked on. You say, "Hi, how are you?" "I'm not happy."
The number 1 red flag, ignoring repeated warnings to turn off that cell phone. While the need to do so is open for debate, Heather has no choice but to enforce the law, despite passengers' best efforts to resist.
When you're sitting there with your head between your leg and you're talking to the floor, I don't think you have a friend down there. I know what you're doing.
On Andrei Stepsky's flight last year, one person chatting on the phone wasn't listening to anyone.
The woman just ignored the stewardess, turned away from her rudely, put her hand up as if to say, speak to the hand, I'm on the phone, you're not important.
The pilot also tried, but failed.
And the pilot immediately just turned around and said, get her off my plane.
You heavy people don't reach it. Let me go.
Almost 400 passengers were reported last year for refusing to turn off electronic devices or other onboard bad behavior.
What is it? Come on, that's it. I'm pointing. You told me to point. Don't be a hard ass.
And that's just at the New York City area airports alone. In fact, belligerence is another key red flag. Brandon Rodriguez and his girlfriend Jenna Brown saw exactly that in an erratic fellow flyer last July.
Everyone started looking around at each other saying, oh boy, is this what we're going to have to deal with for the next 2 or 3 hours on this plane?
Still on the runway, flight attendants couldn't convince her to calmly cooperate. So Brandon got his camera rolling.
They started laughing. It was in response to her yelling out, somebody help me. I mean, we don't want you here.
I'm going with you.
Heather Poole says there's good reason to get rid of potentially disruptive passengers before it's too late.
If something escalates in flight, no one's coming. There's no police to call, there's no firemen to call.
Can't open the door.
No way out. Though several unstable passengers have actually tried, attempting to open the plane's door in mid-flight. A terrifying prospect that seems easy to pull off in this commercial. Fortunately, that's impossible. Cabin air pressure, together with special locks, keep the doors sealed shut. Another onboard problem, fighting passengers, often fueled by alcohol or medication. It can force a pilot to take drastic measures. Back in 2001, Cynthia and Crystal McCula, twin sisters, were flying from San Francisco to Shanghai. Once in the air, they fought with each other and began cursing.
Well, if you would just let her be, we would be fine.
Screaming and spitting at fellow passengers.
I don't think any of us are happy over the situation that we're in right now. We're going to land the airplane. I know it's not good news.
After landing in Alaska, police board the plane and arrest the troublesome twins.
Please help me. Why? I didn't do nothing wrong.
The sisters were later fined and sentenced to community service. As for their 231 fellow passengers, all of them were stranded in Alaska for more than a day before completing their marathon trip. The biggest booster of bad behavior? Drinking. Making matters worse, alcohol actually becomes more potent at sky-high altitudes. But flight attendants have to walk a fine line between keeping customers happy and controlling their craziness. This alcohol-fueled high school senior trip to Mexico back in 1998 got the party started early with a wet t-shirt contest on board. The biggest surprise here, not only does the flight attendant on this charter let it continue, he actually jumps in to act as an MC. This saucy steward was soon out of a job. Of course, not all high-flying hijinks are so out in the open.
I just joined the Mile High Club in the bathroom across the Atlantic Ocean.
This guy was so proud of joining the legendary club in the airplane bathroom that he publicly staked his claim on YouTube.
Come here.
It was with me.
So we knock, we pray they come out with their pants up.
Heather says these days you're more likely to find lofty lovers back in their seats on overnight flights.
Usually when one passenger is sitting on top of another passenger, you have a pretty good idea of what might be happening there. Throw that blanket away.
Remember, cameras are everywhere today. capturing outrageous behavior for the fame
Get my pants back on.
or shame of YouTube. But Andre has his own way of dealing with just the plain crazy.
I found it a hell of a lot easier to just take the bus.
Next, from real people to really famous and really outrageous. First class freakouts. And who could this celebrity be?
And then the celebrity who was biting their toenails in business class. And I'll give you one little hint.
Yes.
Female.
And very flexible.
Yeah, right?
2020 continues with Star Crazy.
They shine on the red carpet or behind the velvet rope, but celebrities can set off that same shiver of excitement on a commercial airliner, even among the in-flight crew.
The first time you see these celebrities, you just can't believe you're talking to them.
Author of Cruising Attitude and still a flight attendant, Heather Poole remembers Robert Redford needing only a Diet Coke to be happy. And has heard of one Nashville superstar working 9 to 5.
Working 9 to 5.
On the beverage cart.
Can you imagine Dolly Parton serving you a drink?
Other high-profile faces prefer to stay on the down low and not be disturbed in flight.
How will they phrase that?
Actually, sometimes they don't phrase it. They just put a blanket on their head.
You've seen people put blankets on their head?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a signal
There's
meaning
a
what?
big-time star on board.
Some of those big-time stars are used to getting things their way. With their baby at rest, one celebrity couple had a request.
They asked the pilot not to make any announcement.
Flight number 715.
They wanted the announcement stuff because the baby was sleeping.
Mm-hmm. You can't tell a pilot not to make an announcement.
It's people with a ridiculous sense of entitlement, people who just think they deserve better.
How do you give those people a dose of reality?
I don't know that these people live in the same world that you and I live. I think there's a lot of celebrities who don't have a dose of reality.
Like the one who started doing sit-ups in the aisle.
She's very famous and really attractive, and I swear every man was in the aisle. And then the celebrity who was biting their toenails in business class. And I'll give you one little hint.
Yes.
Female.
And very flexible.
Yeah, right?
Other stars can be quite inflexible.
I want that milk!
Supermodel Naomi Campbell nearly stuffed her seatmate into the overhead bin after he tried snapping her picture. Seems the queen of the catwalk hasn't always fared so well on this kind of runway.
She was my client for hours. I think she has some anger issues.
In 2008, while her British Airways flight was at the gate in London, she was told that one of her bags wasn't on the flight. The result was a row at Britannia, a first-class scream fest at crew and captain. Weeks later, hundreds of approved electronic devices captured her day in court. In an interview with Sky News, she struck a contrite note.
I'm not saying what my behavior was correct. I guess I just took it too far, maybe.
She was sentenced to 200 hours community service and was said to be banned for life from British Airways. A similar fate befell Jonathan Rhys-Meyers from pay cable's The Tudors.
To get to the heart of the story, you have to go back to the beginning.
Fair enough. In 2007, Rhys-Meyers never quite made it onto a plane in Dublin after apparently overindulging. In 2009, he was said to have had a T-Many Martuni's melee with a barkeeper at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, an assault for which he reportedly paid a €1,000 fine. In May 2010, his drunken behavior purportedly got him a lifetime no-fly from United. Last year, when he couldn't get to a toilet, France's Gérard Depardieu's last resort was a bottle, as he explained to a BBC talk show.
Yes, I pee on the plane, yes.
Ah, but his aim was less than true, oui?
No.
Oh, too much for the bottle.
Too much.
Oui, leading a flight attendant to tell him, "You're in trouble."
She said,
In 2010, Josh Duhamel got tossed from an Air Wisconsin flight for not shutting off his BlackBerry during taxiing. He did give a full apology right away.
I'm good. Lesson learned.
And perhaps you've heard of this guy.
Let me tell you something. I am God.
No malice aforethought, perhaps, but Alec Baldwin defied the requests of one crew to turn off his iPad. Heather Poole says in those sort of situations, it's not as though celebrities get a tougher time.
You know, if anything, we might give them a little bit more leeway. Instead of telling them 5 times, I might tell them 6 or 7 times, because that story is going to make every news outlet like it did.
Baldwin got 30 rocked off the American Airlines flight while tweeting, "There's always United." Days later, he was riffing on SNL.
And on behalf of everyone at American Airlines, issue an apology to Mr. Alec Baldwin.
Seems like Alec eventually got the idea, as this commercial suggests.
Can you play games on that? Not on the runway. Oh.
In 2007, a Qantas flight attendant chatted up actor Ralph Fiennes in the galley. They wound up unfastening their seatbelts and bringing themselves to a full upright position in the business class lavatory.
You're irresistible.
That flight attendant, Lisa Robertson, would later tell the story to Aussie men's magazine Zoo Weekly.
Before we even got into the toilet, he started kissing me really passionately and taking my clothes off. That's sort of why we went in there, straight into it now.
Lisa would tell a British tabloid that Rafe's mile-high ardor reminded her of his role in The English Patient. As they exited, it was Lisa who got busted by a fellow flight attendant who saw her leaving the lab with the actor best known as Voldemort in the Harry Potter movies.
They never learn. Such a pity.
Yet Lisa says Rafe didn't stay in touch, and she wound up losing her job. As Anna Kournikova reportedly learned on a flight to Miami, celebrities with pets have to keep them in their carriers. But celebrity pets? Different story.
I've had celebrity pets on board, and they do get to sit in seats. I had 5 Spuds MacKenzies all lined up in a row.
Remember this beer-selling sensation?
His name is Spuds MacKenzie.
You had 5 Spuds MacKenzies on one of your flights?
In business class. Best part was that there were 5 meals that I didn't have to have a problem with somebody not getting the meal choice. And they didn't yell. They were great. They were nice.
Next, TSA pat-downs and passenger meltdowns on YouTube.
I'm gonna police officer now!
Taking their jobs seriously or just taking liberties?
This woman, she touched my vagina 4 times.
If it can happen to Miss America, can it happen to you? When we come back. 2020 continues with the pat-down.
Before you can get here, you've got to get through here. Airport security. For many, it's little more than a routine hassle. You know the drill: emptying pockets, kicking off shoes, measuring those liquids to exactly 3 ounces. But for others, it's a personal violation.
I'm gonna police officer now! No! I'm a police officer!
Outrageous airport incidents are all over the internet.
For God's sake, somebody help me!
This woman, she touched my vagina 4 times.
Susie Castillo, Miss USA 2003, broke down after she says a TSA agent felt her up in Dallas. She immediately posted the tearful account on YouTube.
I'm just really upset.
And how could a California grandmother be arrested after a tug of war over her elderly mom's applesauce?
Are these guys clueless as far as what has just gone on?
And how about the 3-year-old boy with a broken leg whose parents asked, is this really the face of terrorism? There's a growing movement of angry travelers who say airport security
Supervisor
can get just plain crazy.
The last thing I need to be is arrested for the most ridiculous thing ever.
Frequent flyer Stacey Armato will never forget her TSA nightmare in 2010.
I was told to be quiet if I knew what was good for me.
That's her trying to get home to her 7-month-old son when she says she ran up against power-hungry screeners in Phoenix.
And she said, holding the bag, you know, we're probably going to have to put this through the x-ray.
That bag was breast milk she'd pumped for her son earlier that day. To mommies everywhere, liquid gold.
So you obviously didn't want it to be screened because...
Because I don't want it to go through radiation. I travel every single week.
She'd bumped heads with the TSA about this before, so on this day, Stacey came prepared.
I made sure to print out the rules so that we knew right away what the rules were. Breast milk is a medical liquid and you're supposed to be afforded an alternate screening. And she kind of swatted my hand away to not touch my bag.
Scared and humiliated, she says she was confined for close to an hour in a glass cage.
But you haven't physically challenged anybody.
No, absolutely not.
So yet police are called.
Yes. And so he comes in and he tells me they saw me coming, they remembered me from last week, and they wanted to teach me a lesson.
What do you say about a case like that when a young mother feels that she was being abused essentially by the TSA?
Well, I'm sympathetic to anybody who feels like they have not received the most professional treatment.
John Pistol, who heads the TSA, declined to talk specifics about Stacy's case. But immediately after the incident, they did issue her a written apology. Still, Stacy's suing the agency for $4 million, enough to buy her own plane.
If you challenge TSA, they're going to ruin your day. They'll make you miss your flight.
Security expert Bruce Schneier is one of TSA's biggest critics.
There's thousands of people trying to implement their procedures, and they get them wrong. There are TSA officers that are not following the rules.
A lot of what we do is pretty ineffective.
This TSA screener, who asked us to conceal her identity, questions whether the agency's worth the nearly $8 billion a year in taxpayer money. She quit in disgust this week after 4 years on the job.
Some people say the TSA agents just don't seem to use common sense. Fair?
Very fair, yes. The TSA doesn't want you to really think too much.
What bothers her most? Those new body scanners popping up in airports everywhere. You know, the ones that give screeners an up-close and personal view of your body?
There are vulnerabilities. They do miss the objects that they're supposed to be catching.
It does miss from time to time.
Oh, it's definitely not 100%.
And what about those controversial pat-downs?
I personally did not like them from day one.
Have these invasive pat-downs in your mind made us safer?
No.
But TSA insists this room inside DC's Dulles International Airport speaks volumes.
In many cases, it really is a what were you thinking?
Check out the cache of deadly weapons found on passengers. Tasers, knives.
So what you see in front of you is roughly 1 to 2 months worth of prohibited items that have been found at our checkpoint.
Think this innocent water bottle's harmless? Think again. Even this shaving cream can be a hiding place for something sinister.
We know from the multiple layers of security we have, and the thoroughness of our security is a deterrent.
But not everyone's convinced.
2 things have made us safer, and that's reinforcing the cockpit door and passengers knowing they have to fight back. Everything else has been security theater.
They're being made to wait in line. They're being subjected to very invasive pat-downs. It's just a big show.
Next, when you're in that plane, what's sometimes going on in the control tower? Sleeping on the job, pills.
I got hooked on Vicodin.
And what they thought was a prank just this week.
Did you hear that? Yeah. I know that's BS. I know.
2020 continues with Secrets of the Tower.
Emergency smoke in cockpit. Roll trucks, please.
That should catch your attention. Smoke in the cockpit. A desperate call for help at Denver International Airport. Ignored, even ridiculed by air traffic control.
Did you hear that? Yeah. I know that's BS. I know it is. The United 12. You know the United 12 anywhere.
The voice of the United pilot muffled by an oxygen mask. A real-life emergency the controller believes is just a prank.
I apologize if you probably heard there. That's not real what we're hearing on the frequency.
Only after the plane lands and passengers evacuate onto the runway does reality sink in. This is no hoax. A now sheepish air controller sends in firefighters.
5912, the equipment's on the way.
Controller error, perhaps, but at least he was awake.
Can you get a hold of the tower here?
Try and give another call.
Over the last 5 years, the FAA reports a half-dozen cases of controllers caught literally sleeping at the switch. In Reno, a small plane circles the field as controllers from another airport try to wake up someone in the tower.
Okay, we're going to call him on the phone line. All right, we'll circle more when they just have to land.
The FAA now banning solo overnight shifts, a change former air traffic controller and author of Secrets from the Tower, Bob Richards, has long been calling for.
You got to talk to the airplane. You got to figure out how to get him where he goes. You got to deduce the problem. For one guy to do that is insane.
Life and death pressure like that can come at a price. Back when Richards was on the job in the 80s and 90s, it drove some controllers, even him for a time, to substance abuse.
I got hooked on Vicodins. You rationalize that, thinking that this is going to make you better, this will make me better at what I do.
Is this part of the culture of the control tower?
It's part of any culture of any type of job. It happens like with everybody else in society who've experienced success and power and ego and everything else. They get used to it and it's like, I gotta have that.
Controllers hopped up on pills, a scary thought, especially in a job that takes intense concentration.
If you don't stay on top of these airplanes, they're going to gobble you up.
American 583 Heavy, clear to take off.
Runway 25 right, clear for takeoff.
It's not easy, juggling planes.
United 24 Heavy, clear for takeoff.
United 24 Heavy, clear for takeoff.
As I witnessed firsthand, hooked to a simulator at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, training the next generation of air traffic controllers. Clearly, I will not be among them.
Now, you realize, all of a sudden, that
I've done the wrong
United,
thing.
so tell United 860 go around.
United 860 go around.
That was probably as close as you ever want to get right there.
That would be some paperwork.
Yeah, that'd be probably, they take you downstairs and talk to you a little bit.
Are you aware you got two airplanes headed towards one another?
Yes, I'm aware.
You gonna get ready to turn one of them?
As soon as I put that jet link between them.
It's a wild world captured in the movie Pushing Tin. Controllers out of control. A reputation not helped by this incident at JFK a few years ago.
JetBlue 171 clear for takeoff.
Clear for takeoff, JetBlue 171.
You're right, that's not the voice of a controller behind the mic. That's the controller's son, actually allowing children to relay instructions to aircraft.
JetBlue 171 contact departure.
Over departure, JetBlue 171. Awesome job.
Pilots may have been amused, but the FAA was not. The controller suspended for 45 days and has since retired.
And with my kids, it wasn't any different.
So you can't come down too hard on the guys at JFK because you did it yourself.
I probably might have let my son say something maybe at 2 in the morning or something.
Even after a plane lands safely, the controller's job is not done. They guide jets to the gate. Last April at New York's Kennedy Airport, the wing of a giant Air France Airbus A380 clips the tail of a commuter jet, spinning the baby plane like a pinwheel.
Roll the emergency trucks at Pike. We've been hit by Air France.
And sometimes there are threats no one could predict.
It's a vehicle, and he's high speed rate.
Runway rage at Philadelphia International Airport this March.
We got a rogue vehicle driving around on the airport.
That's not a jet, it's a Jeep. He drove right through a security fence.
Let's just use caution. The vehicle is heading y'all's direction right now. He's on runway 9 left. The car chasing him.
And the controllers have to stop jets on approach from landing on top of the Jeep, waving off airliners at the last second.
Got a target on the runway. Go around. Roger, going around.
A day in the tower, one old air traffic controller is glad he missed.
You miss it? You miss the adrenaline?
I do miss it, but I'm starting to make less trips to the cardiologist now, so it's worked out for me that way.
Next, just plain crazy in love. From marriage proposals on board to rescue boats after Sully's crash landing in the Hudson.
Did you ever think about that cute lady you'd seen earlier in the day?
I was a little more concerned about
staying alive.
Staying alive.
2020 continues with Love is in the Air.
For all the bad tempers, bad legroom, and bad food you see on airplanes, there is one soaring upside.
Love is in the air.
Yes, love is in the air. And no, perverts, we're not talking about the kind of love from Bridesmaids.
Hey, not Air Marshal John, you want to get back in that restroom and not rest?
I think the best place to find love is on an airplane or even at an airport.
You've already heard flight attendant Heather Poole talk about her nightmare passengers, but one turned out to be her dream and husband. Of the hundreds and hundreds of passengers she saw every day, he stood out for one reason.
He came on with a really good-looking sandwich. Flight attendant, we're always very hungry. I saw that sandwich. I said, that looks good. And he's like, hey, you want a bite?
But if you're looking for airborne affection with no sandwich available, there is now a solution. Will Scully Power and Maya started dating after they exchanged contact information on a flight back to Australia. Just this January, they launched a website, WeMetOnAPlane.com, to help people search for those flying flings that never quite were. They've had more than 300,000 hits on their website in just the last few months, and can't wait to send their first couple to the altar. Derek Walker got there in style.
They just kind of looked at me and they said, it's a go. So I was like, all right, it's showtime.
For Derek, the love boat has nothing on the love plane. On a flight from Salt Lake City to Phoenix with his girlfriend Amanda and his whole family on board to help, he launched Operation Plane Proposal. His mother convinced the crew.
Yeah, they were very enthusiastic about it. They're like, oh, sweet, yeah, let's do it. Liven things up around here.
Excuse me, we have a special announcement.
My heart was pounding. It was one of those things that so many pieces had to fall into place for it to really work out perfectly.
Then it comes.
About the whole thing. Will you marry?
I just was completely shocked. And once I heard Mary, I was just like, oh my gosh. It felt like I was in a dream. It was crazy.
People were
crying.
clapping and cheering. It was like a stadium in there.
Air travel must have a whole new meaning for you now.
It's true.
It really does, yep.
Every time an announcement starts, you're going to be like, what's this?
Yeah. I always think it's about me now.
So much high-altitude drama, you get the sense their actual wedding on the ground was a bit overshadowed.
Nothing out of the ordinary. Very
It was
normal.
Was it a good day though? The greatest day of your life, I'd hope.
Of course it was the greatest day of my life.
Also, if you're seated in rows 8 or 9...
Ben Bostic and Laura Zick can easily point to the greatest day in their lives, which was nearly their last. It began on the tarmac at New York's LaGuardia Airport. Ben, in seat 20A, noticed Laura walk onto the plane. Something went ding over his head, and it wasn't the call button.
Well, I'm thinking she's really attractive. It'd be nice if she could sit beside me.
She didn't. She was in 17D.
Did you notice him at all?
Not at all. Not at all. I was very preoccupied.
Soon, they would both be preoccupied. The date was January 15th, 2009. The flight was US Air 1549 to Charlotte. The pilot, Captain Chesley Sullenberger.
It's returning back towards LaGuardia.
Just after takeoff, the plane hit a flock of geese.
I looked out the window and the left engine was on fire.
And my first thoughts were, this is not happening.
And I knew I was no longer in control, and so I became calm and basically was ready to die.
We're going to be nuts.
And into the Hudson they went, brought down safely by Captain Sully. After impact, they both managed to struggle their way out. Here's Laura on a life raft. The images now an iconic part of history. They would not see each other again that day. They would not see each other for another 6 months. It happened at a reunion of fellow passengers. They were introduced by a mutual friend who said,
"Have you met Laura?" And I said no, but I was checking her out on the plane. And, you know, kind of joking, trying to break the ice. And
I just kind of laughed it off, but then I was like, wait a minute, what did he say?
They ended up talking all night, and soon a romance took flight.
We feel very lucky that we didn't have to deal with all of, you know, the drama of some relationships.
Well, there was a little bit of drama there, though, wasn't there?
But it had nothing to do with our relationship. It had to do with sorting out things in the plane crash and everything.
They say the crash landing made them not just a better couple than they would have been, but better people. Every night before bed, they always take time to dance.
What are some of the songs you like to dance to?
Dave Matthews, Crash.
Is that a joke?
No. We kind of made jokes as passengers about crashing. We're happy we survived and we got a bonus. I mean, we met each other because of it.
That's quite a bonus and quite a sense of humor from our couple. And that's our program for tonight. I'm Elizabeth Vargas. For all of us at 2020 and ABC News, good night and good luck flying those friendly skies.